Tim Nats, everybody. Move Like Human on Instagram. That's how I came across you. And so thanks for chatting, man.
Yeah, man. Thanks for caring about whatever I'm up to. I'm happy to talk with
Dude,
people about it. It's just, yeah.
the way that you, I think, approach social media, at least from the consumer of your social media, is, I think, inspiring to me. And it's a cool way of doing
Just keeping it real.
it. Yeah, and I think you're actually, I feel like an actual real, this sounds weird because we don't know each other in real life, but it's like, oh, you're asking genuine questions and
Mm.
want people to interact that way. That feels like a more genuine way of having social media and maybe your own relationship with social media.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I had like a 15, maybe 20-year abstinence from social media. And, like I think I popped on there a couple times to maybe, because I also trim horses' hooves. Um, so I think I popped on there maybe once or twice on Facebook over the past decade and a half to maybe market myself. And I was in a Facebook group when I was going through my training in the AANHCP. And, um, but I always had such an aversion to it for all the reasons why most people, what we know about it now, as far as just how it pulls our attention and creates so many distortions around how we view ourselves in the world and judge ourselves and judge others. And um, but I live out pretty far out in the woods, and it was just quite a lot for me to just be driving to town to train people all the time. I was spending a lot of time in my car and just craving more closeness with my family and being at home. And my wife was encouraging me, she's like, why don't you just share your practice and share how we live? And I battled with it for some time. And she was just like, just keep it real. And so I've just been sharing it. I never know how I look before I go on or whatever. So um, I guess that's lent to a very it's lent to an authenticity that it seems that people are hungry for and is inspiring people. And so yeah, it's been encouraging to get that feedback. It all happened pretty fast, and I'm now I'm coming up against how to maintain or systems and boundaries and stuff like this, because I'm seeing the effects that it has on me, just like it has on like a teenager. It's having that effect on me where I'm like, my mind goes to my phone, and like, oh, I need to respond, or like I need to, and like I even got caught in the trap on one of my videos where like early on, one of the videos that went quasi viral or whatnot, it was like me doing self massage out in the woods in the morning.
Yeah.
And I was getting trashed so hard by so many people on there, getting called a meth head. I got called a pedophile. I got called a homeless guy. And I was like, later that day, I was like, well, I'm like, well, I haven't, I got a newborn baby. I haven't been sleeping that much. Maybe I do look a bit run down, maybe I'm not looking that good. Like
Yeah.
maybe I'm not that well. And then I was like, whoa, fuck. I was like, I was like getting sucked into the, that trap, that social media
Yeah.
trap. And my wife was like, and then I was like, oh, okay. So I'm fine. Um,
How long
but
have you
yeah, it's,
been, I guess, doing it now? Like back or
uh,
on for the first time?
I think like in earnest, like 5 months or something like that.
Dude. And it's so, you're probably just in a spot now in your life where you know yourself more, and it probably wouldn't have gone so well if you did it 10 years ago when you're just in a different spot in your life. But to hear you say, like, I'm aware of that now, I don't get on as much as before, just, learning about the effects, and I work out early in the morning before everyone's up. don't grab my phone, but some mornings I feel myself wanting to just go get your phone, scroll Instagram between one of your movements. I was like, well, for what? Like, it's so crazy. It is like a little drug just like calling to us. Like, come on, just see what
Yeah.
everybody's up to.
Yeah, and there's no real reason for me to be looking at it, but something's happening on my page literally every few seconds. And so like it's giving me that like I see
Yeah.
an update, Like I don't have it pinging me, but if I open it, something happened on there. And
Yeah.
it's just really interesting to see how it sucked me in. And so I'm luckily finding support now to like be able to step out of where I can just coach and I can just do content, but like not have to be interacting with every single, because I don't have any real marketing experience. I don't have any like systems. Like I
Yeah.
don't know how to set up an email campaign. I don't know how to, like, luckily the Instagram app has all those features that I'm just like, oh, this is like I can do this.
Yeah.
But other than that, I'm like, So luckily I got some friends who are helping me out now. So it's
Oh,
hopefully
that's
it's
awesome.
we're gonna find a new balance and be more efficient. I can still live the healthy life I want that's not absorbed in social media, because I actually want to encourage people to not be on social media, honestly.
Yeah. It's got to be an interesting like dichotomy for you to encourage
Yeah.
people through social media to not even be on here.
Well, it's like if you can't beat them, you got to join them, right? I mean, like we've been pushed into a world of um, just technological dependence. It's like
Yes.
I almost have to have my phone. I almost have to have this smartphone if I'm going to work remote and not be driving all the time, still live in the woods, but not be dependent on driving everywhere and getting underneath horses all the time, which I don't want to do. Although I love getting under horses, I don't want to be doing it full time. And so it's kind of a blessing and a curse. And there's a ton of good to be had through like these conversations we get to have.
Yes.
I know that at least one person will find inspiration through this conversation. And so
Yes.
that's worth it. Like I show up for anyone's podcast, basically. It doesn't have to be a big podcast. It doesn't have to be anyone who's known, um, because I just want to truly help people. And I need to have meaning and value in my work. And
Yes.
I've spent so many years trying to understand myself and get myself out of pain, be strong, be healthy amidst a society that profits off our sickness and weakness. And so I feel like living radically healthy is a form of activism today. We get to pull ourselves out of the pocketbooks of
Yes.
small group of people who make money off us not being well. And there's so much gatekeeping around movement and how to take care of yourself. And there's so much opposing opinion that I'm just like, it's not that complicated, but we do need it's demystified and simplified, and we do need each other. And so I think that like the human animal is so interdependent with other humans, but we've been again polarized and divided for whatever reasons. People can go down whatever rabbit hole they want around that, but nonetheless, we're divided. And so, like, we need to come back in solidarity with each other, close to nature, taking care of ourselves, and and then obviously doing that as a mirror for our kids, right? Because they're going to become us, and so it's like
Yes.
we can either take action and develop ourselves into who we'd hope that they would maybe become in some way one day, or we look back later on in life and we go, well, I wish I would have just cultivated myself a little bit more, because now here I am and I can't do it. So
Yes.
huge inspiration for me is the boys that I raise. Um, and yeah, I've just, I lived such a disenchanted and yeah, such a disenchanted life as a teenager. And I was so downtrodden, didn't understand my place and all the suffering and all the injustice I saw everywhere. Um, and I always wanted to push back and rebel and step out of it. And I did step out of it legitimately for the better half of a decade on retreat, and took that time to really find myself, which I'm still doing today. But and now I want to come back. I want to help people. I don't want to just sit idle. I don't want to just be completely removed. Um, and so I think that's my intention now, is to help people. So I just want to.
That's
I'm trying to do that.
the together thing. Like all this, if you look on your phone, you would think that everybody hates everybody. But when you are out in the world and you sit down in front of somebody, you're like, wait, aren't we supposed to hate each other? Like, you voted for somebody different, or I voted for somebody different, or you think this way and I think this way. We're supposed to hate each other if we're on Facebook, but you're just a
Hmm.
human. And I love this conversation, just talking in front of people. But for some reason, we just don't have that anymore as much as before, and especially not in nature, like you said. To add the nature stuff on top of that has been so key for my family. We have
Hmm.
a big property we're making into a home. We don't live on it quite yet, but to see you do what you're doing, we go out to our property and it's like, man, this is it. Like we all feel so refreshed being out here, and time flies by but slows down all at the same time. And it's just, I don't know, it's a simple way of living, but it's so vital for everybody. I wish everybody could do it, but I think I see, we're coming back to where, it's not so radical to live on a piece of property and maybe grow some of your own food or hunt some of your own food or homeschool your kids. Like
Yeah.
maybe that's just a bubble that I get to live in and get to talk with cool people like you. But I hope as a society we're kind of seeing like maybe we can take control of our own lives and our kids' lives instead of just do whatever whoever tells us what to do, how it should be.
Yeah. It's like we've come a long way from the village, so to speak.
Yes.
Like when we lived, when we depended on each other, we grieved with each
Yeah.
other, we celebrated with each other, we raised each other's kids together, we lived in nature and we were dependent on the environment, and we found a living spirit in the environment because we had deep relationship with it. And that brings a really deep sense of place and fulfillment, and just a nurtured like love for life, which I see like so many people are jaded and disconnected because they're not connected to their habitat. And there's this disconnect from the human being and animal. And it's like us over here and then nature's over here with animals.
Yeah.
When
Yeah.
really it's like we're actually a very evolved animal and we have biological needs that we can't escape.
Yeah.
And one of those is the village. And so I'm really big on the idea of revillaging. I feel really lucky to live close with a number of families on this property that we've known each other for 10 years. If people are
Oh
interested in
man.
living off grid, I think that's a really smart way to do it, is do it with some people and create a tiny village. And
Oh
I think
man.
that, and I think that this doesn't have to be limited to people who want to live way out in the woods and, you know, do a lot of the things for themselves, like harvesting firewood or food or all that stuff. Like you can re-village, I think, even in your suburban community. Like here's the deal: is like you need to re-village no matter where you're at. So I think focusing on your local community and like getting close and taking care of each other in our small little groups is essential, especially in a time of like so much uncertainty and upheaval and like yeah, and it just brings it's like its own nutrient. The village is its
Mm.
own nutrient, in my opinion, and like we need that nourishment. And like if we're not getting it, then I think it leaves us a bit like there's it's like a dream you forgot or something. Like you can almost touch that
Mm.
thing. You almost can remember that thing you need or that you needed to talk about or do, but you keep forgetting. And yeah, and yeah, so it's a process, and I think everybody is at a different place with that. And all we can really do is just take small steps towards becoming more human again, which involves
Yeah.
all those things.
And I get it. And what you said of even, and that's why I like to have these conversations, man. If just one person can maybe get one word or idea from one of us out of this conversation of maybe I can slow down and realize like, oh, let me go say hi to the neighbor or whatever it is. Like I get it. It's so easy to get caught up, especially if you have kids and both the parents are working and you got to take the kids to the school and you got to get to work on time. It just becomes a cycle of disconnection though, really, because you're not connecting with anyone, maybe other than your cubicle mate or whatever. But yeah, just one little small step towards, you know, the life that you want to live and probably need to be living.
Yeah. Yeah. And
How many
it's, yeah, this can go down so many trajectories with that.
I
It's like
was
yeah, you're gonna ask how many people I live with.
oh then I was gonna ask, so how do you balance like, man, this has worked so well for me and my soul and my humanity. I want to tell people about it, but also don't, at least I've been in the mindset of not judging, but almost being ideological in some of my beliefs in the past of just like, man, everybody needs to be doing this. Everybody needs to be living this way. And throw social media on top of there. Like, how do you balance all of
I'm really ideological too.
that? Yeah, yeah,
I'm like I'm like as ideological and principled as it gets, like to a detriment, Like
yeah.
I'm an extreme kind of guy. Like I found that like in my youth, extreme music, extreme action, like extreme substance and physical abuse as a teenager, and and then I went the full other way into this total extreme austerity, into basically living like a monk. And now I try and find my way in the middle, right? But um, yeah, I mean, I think the thing is that like, well, people are like, well, we can't all rewild, we can't all go hunt, like we can't all go live in the woods. There's no room in the woods, and there's so many people and all this and that, and that might be true. And I don't actually think I don't have the answers to any of this stuff. I think we have a pretty big, we got some big situations going on the planet, and like
Yeah.
it's gonna take some real creative thinking, and I try to maintain a level of optimism, but it's strange. It's a strange time, especially when you look at the lens through like just a biological lens, which I try to do to just kind of keep me grounded in how I need to take care of my health and stuff. Um, and it's like, yeah, augmented reality and virtual reality and all this stuff that's coming out, and like the need, no need to even interact anywhere or go anywhere. I mean, I don't even need to go to the woods because I can just go like dude, and then I'm like 3D in the woods. My friend showed me this video the other day. Like this is already like it
A
exists, right?
thing.
It's a thing. And yeah, and so I think that there's we can get idealistic about living in the woods, and maybe that's not going to be available to everybody, but what is beyond idealism is the biological necessity for movement. Like your body needs movement. If you don't get to choose if you need movement, you will suffer if you don't move, and you will suffer if you sit underneath fluorescent lights and don't go outside. Like that's just, there's no escaping that reality. You will suffer if you don't interact with other humans in the flesh. You will, in my opinion, you will.
Yes.
And so if we have to find ways to do that creatively, even if we live in a high rise building. It's like connect with all the people on your floor. I don't know,
Yeah.
like make friends with the doorman, check in with him, see how he's doing, see what he needs. You have a little bit extra of something, share, like try and organize ways to interact with your people outside and do things, make things, like I think there's ways that we can do it creatively, even if we've been removed from our habitat, which I'd say we have been removed from our habitat. And um, yeah, and I think like Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I think living out in the woods and taking trips to the woods is going to become more and more of a novel and healing thing as time goes on, as people get further and further removed from nature, which I think is going to happen.
Oh, for sure. Our my wife and I do vision boards at the beginning of every year, and we did them in the same room, but kind of showed them at the end. Hers has the words "Our farm heals," and then mine had holistic healing, or something basically along the lines of we want to use our space that we're so fortunate enough to have, woods and ponds and all that stuff to bring people to it. It's like, man, just
Hmm.
come out here. Like we have no agenda. Just come out here, bring your kids. You won't regret it. And we see it like when a 6-year old, 7-year old girl is running around with my daughter, and it may be her first time, she's like, what is this place? It's like, just run around, do whatever you want. Go catch a frog, look at a frog, run from a frog. I don't know. But you see it in their, you see it in their face, like, man, when can I come back? It's always, when can I come back? Man.
Yeah.
So we want to create a space where, we can bring as many families as we can out there. And our goal, and it's so cool to hear that you're kind of doing it, is we invite people, hey, come build a house out there with us. You can have, like, we're not going to sell you the land. Just come build a house. We want to raise our kids together and do it with you guys. And there's still some level of aversion to that from people. It's like, man, we're being genuine. Like, please, we want to have people out there. So I guess, how did you find like your people in your tribe? And also, how many people do you live with out there?
Yeah, yeah. I think that these are good questions because if I think that it's important to not be too hasty when you go to establish those
Mm,
per- permanent relationships. Like buying land is, or sharing land with someone is, it's like beyond a marriage, right? Because like in a marriage, if things don't work out, you can voluntarily leave, you can get a divorce, but like it gets sticky when there's like co-ownings of land and stuff like this. So I
mm,
would just say my advice to anybody, and you included, would be just really know that who you're entertaining that with is someone that you can have really honest conversations with. You're completely 100% yourselves in front of each other, totally authentic and transparent. I would say that you feel like they're your ride or die. I would like,
yeah,
like you could go through anything together, and hopefully have had a good amount of time in community in some sense together before you decide to do that. So, um, like my friend Scott, who owns this land, I don't own this land. Um, I met him on retreat. So when I lived on retreat with my teacher in Colorado, Scott came through and ended up living there, and then we lived on retreat with each other for 2 years in the same house. And we got for over 1,000 hours of practice next to each other, sitting at 5 a.m. in the morning. Like very close with this guy.
yeah,
um, yeah, and so we've been. His wife is one of my absolute best friends. Just I've been there with his kids growing up, all this stuff, and so yeah, so I would come visit him out here every spring or summer before I ended up moving out here while I still lived in Colorado because he lived out here. He moved from Colorado to here. And yeah, we just know that we can have the difficult conversations. We can celebrate fully. We can like we parent on the same level. So like that's a
mm,
huge one. Is like if you're gonna,
yeah,
because everything changes when you got other people's kids around, and you need to have agreements, right? Like all the families here, there's just a few of us at the moment. Um, there we all feel comfortable like stepping in to interjecting in a conflict between kids and having a real
yeah,
conversation with any of the kids. There's no like, um, I can't talk to Braden or I can't talk to Zashaya. These kids aren't my kids. I can. And we all respect each other as parents, and we all respect each other as far as how we um, choose to relate with our kids as people. And so I think that is like, that's like number one, you know, because there's
Yeah.
different ways you can live with each other, right? You could like, have your own have your own little chunk of land, and like maybe you get together every now and then. Maybe you get together once a month, but you're like kind of like just good neighbors. That's cool
Yeah.
too, you know, and like
Yeah.
maybe you do firewood together every now and then, or like maybe you have a community, maybe you have a garden, and like maybe you have a potluck once a month or something like that. And then there's different, like I lived in an off-grid community in Hawaii 13 years ago, where I met some of my best friends, and like we were so close that like we all slept in the same structure, all of our beds in a circle. There was like 8, 10 of
Dude.
us in there, and like we would all wake up when anyone's kids were sick that night. We would all read the same bedtime story going to bed. We would wake up in the morning and the babies would crawl between beds, and we'd share our dreams together. And so, and that was,
Man.
it was incredibly beautiful, and like some of my best friends to this day. And, that's a level of intimacy that's scary for some people, I imagine, and maybe sounds taboo and weird to some, and to sounds like to you, it sounds inspiring. And so that's one level of community, right? And then there's like how we do it out here is, yeah, it's like it's 40 acres, but then we're backed up to thousands of acres of public land that's landlocked. So it's basically just like our public land. And yeah, we got a couple creeks that run through the property, and there's a few different families that have known each other for 10 years or more, all three families. And yeah, it's like some we all do different things, right? Like I coach people and I trim horses, so I'm driving to town, or now I'm at home working on my computer a bit. And there's others are traveling musicians, professional musicians, and others are doing all sorts of other stuff. And we got everybody grows food, and there's different seasons of like connection and hanging out. Like we've sometimes it's like everybody's really available and we spend a good amount of time together. Around the holidays we try to, at least. And then sometimes we're just kind of hunkered down in our own little worlds, and that's because the world has us living like that, right? Like it doesn't,
Yeah.
like we still all have to make money, and um, we can't provide all of the things that we want for our kids' experiences to fully thrive out here. So, the kids go to town for their fiddle lessons. The kids go to town for jujitsu. What else? We go to town to the co-op, right? Because it's not like we're food sovereign out here. We grow
Yeah.
food when we can, but we live in the mountains in the Pacific Northwest, and so there's a season. We're not living in Costa Rica,
Yeah.
so
Man,
um,
co-op food. There's a co-op, food co-op in town, the nearest town.
yeah. Oh yeah, like so, yeah. The Ashland Food Co-op is like one of the best co-ops I've ever been to. It's so good.
Damn, dude,
And
we
so
need to get that. I'm outside of Dallas, so that is not happening. But I will say, like the small town where our property is, the Facebook group there. This is one of the great like social media things. Is a little
mm,
community. Like we got my truck stuck on our property. And my mom's just like, I guess I'll just like it's in the middle of nowhere. She was like, I guess I'll just post on this Facebook group, see if anybody can like come pull us out with their tractor. Within like 5 minutes, like 2 tractors showed up. It's just like,
heck
what's
yeah,
up, man? Like, it's like this is it. This is like we just
yeah,
love that act of like, man, people actually care out here
yeah,
because I think there is like a little bit of survival thing. Like nobody's
mm,
coming. There's no like
mm,
government assistance coming out here to help grow my food or pull my truck out or fill in the blanks. Like,
sure.
so yeah, the food co-op thing sounds awesome.
It's a great co-op. Yeah, really good locally sourced produce and really good local regeneratively farmed meat products. And um, yeah, we've had some sheep out here, and we're actually just finished going through those guys. Um, and
Oh,
we got
like you raised them?
chickens. Yeah,
Oh, that's
yeah,
awesome. How long
yeah.
do you how old does sheep have to be before you can butcher them?
I mean, you can. I have a friend who eats. I guess it's mutton once it's like sheep and it's gone over the lamb stage, but I think around a year typically. I'm not like some expert sheep farmer. I'm actually just
Yeah.
figuring out everything as I go. I wasn't
Yeah.
raised this way. I wasn't,
Yeah.
I wasn't really taught any skills as a kid except to play baseball. To
Yeah.
Yeah, so like it's just been this whole process of just like figuring it out for myself. It's been a hard process, like
Yeah.
trying to learn these things later on has been,
Yeah.
I imagine, a lot harder than like our boys who are like, they're working on making friction fire and they can shoot bow and arrow as good as any adult is starting, and they know how to build forts. I mean, our 6-year-old Quill, he can identify more plants than like 90% of people, I bet.
That's
And
cool.
it's been really amazing to see these kids develop in the woods with other kids in real tactile, like hands-on in the elements, and then see how they pair with, bless their hearts, like the kids we see in town who are on addicted to technology and are pacified with technology and living on sugar and like, just
Yes.
processed food and stuff like this. It's like they're like they're a bit like disembodied.
Yes.
They're a
Yeah.
bit like googly, like they're not like all here. They can't listen that well. They can't pay attention that well. And it's just really interesting to see the juxtaposition of the kids who grow out here. And yeah, we do our
Yeah.
best to provide them with, a real adaptable upbringing that's not like sheltering them from everything, but like
Yes.
age appropriate, definitely exposing them to all the things. And you know reading, writing, all that stuff, we get into all that stuff. And
Totally.
but maintaining a priority on connection to nature and how to communicate, and empathy and like skills and
Yes.
movement. Like we're a very movement centric home, and um, so our whole, yeah, with everywhere I look, there's something: a dumbbell, plyo balls, some resistance bands. There's my sandbag, medicine ball. It's like there's just like kettlebells everywhere. It's like
Yeah.
um, we're
I
trying to
like
just
your
create that.
Yeah, I like the video of, and you were explaining kind of the why behind that. It was your living room, and you're like, we have all this stuff in our living room because that's where we walk by most. And it's like, pick up the kettlebell a couple of times. That's a set right there. You do 10
Yeah,
of those over the course of a day. Like, there you go. Like, you moved your body so well.
totally. Yeah.
Dude, I got chills when you were talking about when you lived in a free community in Hawaii. I was on an ayahuasca experience maybe a year and a half ago, and my very first, I guess, experience under the medicine, I was in this, I guess, big hut, like in ancient times, in a desert oasis with palm trees everywhere. And I woke
Mhm.
up, and it was, you know, my family's like bed was a bunch of furs, and then I looked around, and there was like 10 to 15 other families under this giant like wood canopy. I was just like, wow. Like, and everybody was just kind of getting up and walking outside and getting water. And so to hear you describe an experience that I experienced was just, what is happening? How long did you live in the off creek community in Hawaii?
About 1 year.
Yeah,
Yeah.
man,
Yeah,
what
it's
was that even?
on the big island. Um, there's a little community called Gaia Yoga. Oh yeah, the Ano Tarlitz. He owned the land, and he was a permaculture design teacher, and he was a nonviolent communication teacher. And yeah, he was my little brother lived out there and had his first son out there, Keahi, 13 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah, I think Keahi's 13 now. And I went out there to be with them and to live with them. So I moved out there, and they had moved into the Gaia Yoga community. And um, yeah, I grew so much and learned so much at that time. It was such a huge time for me, exploring different things. I was exploring, yeah, because Ano's a trip, and I have so much respect and appreciation for him to this day. It only grows over time. I couldn't really appreciate him when I was there so young. Um, but like he's only eaten instinctively, so by pleasure. alone, one raw food at a time for like, well, that was 25 years. He had never broken a single day when I lived there. And so 13 years later, he's approaching like 40 years of eating and seeing these in robust health. So he's eating, he'd smell a fruit or smell an animal product, and by pleasure alone, like, and then he would eat it till he had a taste change. And he wrote a book on it called Instinctive Eating too. And,
Oh,
so I got to do that for some time, which I think is a lot easier when you're living at the equator or whatnot.
yeah.
Um, avocados, like just wild avocados everywhere. It's like a lot easier, right? Like up here, I'm like, did the acorns fall this year? um, and so, yeah, I got to do that. I got super healthy and felt really good exploring that. And it was like me coming out of my vegan days, because I found
Oh, wow.
veganism and vegetarianism as like a political act. I had taken that on to basically resist and abstain from the culture of abuse that happens in animal farming, conventional animal farming, which
Yes.
I still oppose as adamantly today as I did ever. I just found that like it's not worth shorting my own health, and there's better ways to resist that have a more beneficial ecological impact with less animal suffering, in my opinion, than a vegan diet.
Yeah.
And that's its own talk. But yeah, so I got healthy. I started eating animal foods again and just getting full spectrum light. Living out in the jungle is amazing. Met some of my absolute best friends. Mountain, his name's Sam. We call him Mountain. And yeah, just really, really special times. Just getting embodied. Felt like it was a time for me, like getting really, really into my body and physical. And it's Hawaii, right? It's amazing.
Dude,
So
what made you, where did you go from Hawaii?
yeah, so we were there for a year, and then it was just I was feeling like it was time. I didn't want to be in the community anymore. It was just,
Yeah.
and this is where where I got a good amount of experience just around community and what it's like to be in a community that's not chosen. So like
Mm.
when you're not picking the people that you're going to live with, because there were people coming from everywhere to do the permaculture design course and learn nonviolent communication and come have this kind of woofer kind of like stay away at this property where they get to just have an experience and exchange labor for living there and stuff like this. And so I got to meet all sorts of cool people, but also some people that, bless their hearts, I'd never choose to be with. It just isn't good chemistry, right?
Yeah.
And so that was all coming to a head. It was time to leave for me. But they were my brother and his wife at the time were feeling that too, and so they were like, "Well, let's get out of here." And I'm like, "Well, it's coming up on the summer again, and I've been going to Crestone, Colorado, to go on retreat in the past 2 summers because I had found a teacher that I liked and I wanted to study with them and be there with them. And so this was the third summer, and I'm like, well, I want to go back to Crestone and go spend some time in the mountains, do practice, and I think I'm going to go there and never leave, or for a while. I'm going to
Yeah.
move there essentially. And they were like, well, all right, let's go. We'll go too. And they're still there. I'm not there anymore, but my brother Kevin and his family, they're still there in Crestone, Colorado, and that was
Oh, cool.
13 years ago that we moved there. Yeah, Kiahi was 1, so 12 years ago. And so yeah, I went to Crestone and went and lived with my teachers, and I lived on retreat for 6 years. And then I stayed in Crestone after I came out of retreat and lived there for another 6 years. And then I
Wow.
came here,
When you
and then
say
I came
retreat, dude,
here 3 years ago.
oh, wow. When you say retreat, is that, like, what does that mean, basically? Like, a retreat,
Yeah,
it sounds like you're using it as like a noun, though, or a different,
yeah,
yeah, you get it.
yeah. I'm not. I was retreating, but I was like on retreat. Um, yeah. So it's a very small town. It's a very trippy town. Crestone's is a really interesting place. Um, I'll give you a little history on Crestone real quick. So it's kind
Yeah.
of interesting, but like I don't know if you are familiar with much of like the Buddhist tradition or some of the sects in Buddhism, but um, the Karmapa, who's kind of second in command to the Dalai Lama, the 16th Karmapa back in the 80s, he went to Crestone and he said, Crestone is the second Tibet. And that kind of sparked this huge insurgence of spiritual seekers, so to speak, going to
Yeah.
Crestone and setting up shop and living there. And it ended up like developing into like a myriad of spiritual traditions have like a temple or ashram there, like from there's Native American church, a Christian mystic, a Carmelite, Catholic
Wow.
mystic. There's Zen Buddhist, Vajrayana Buddhist, Mahayana Buddhist, um, wilderness school, like nature school, Sufi sect. And so there's this whole, we call it Ashram Road, where it's like just down this dirt road buried in the mountains of the Sangre de Cristos are these different temples. And so people come from all over to do retreat there. Like some people are up in the hills there doing lifelong retreat where they never come out, ever. They'll never see
Wow.
another person for the rest of their life by their choice. And people drop food off for them and they're just doing their practice up in the mountains. And so it's an interesting place. It's an old mining town, you know, from like 100 years ago, and there's no industry there. There's nothing going on there. It's literally at the end of the road at the base of these 14,000-foot peaks. And I had a couple of teachers who lived there, and they weren't a part of any particular sect. They were more like just like rogue practitioners that just loved practice in general, physical practice, internal cultivation practice, and synthesized all these different schools and had their own unique approach, which I really resonated with. And yeah, I found one of my teacher's books, and I went out there, and yeah, it just that was the beginning. That was the beginning of the rest of my life, really.
Wow.
That was basically where I learned, where I really learned internal cultivation practice, which is makes up so much of my world, and also where I learned the love for synthesizing different schools of cultivation in general, or and physicality as a means for cultivating internal awareness in itself. And so, because my teacher, he was like the most dynamic man still to this day that I've ever met. And like he could work 70 hours a week on a computer as a software programmer, and then just be like beaming with light, like a child, like at a candy store, and just like so authentic, so dynamic. He could be like I said, as naive as a child, and then another minute just like as like a lion, and just was so wise and grounded. And um, yep, I learned so much from him, and not in touch with him at this point. I sent him a picture of my son like a year ago when he was born, and we had a little communication like that. But that was where I was really forged, honestly.
Yeah.
And his
What were
wife forged me more. Like
what are some
she taught me to move my energy in a real way. Like like I really got embodied living there. And that's where I learned about horses. That's where I got into horses and started trimming horses, and then eventually got professionally trained because they had
whoa.
horses. That was part of their practice. And so I lived with my teachers. We'd ride horses a few days a week up into the mountains. I would sit with my teachers once or twice a week. And then I would work in the little town. And so I wasn't like on isolated retreat like some people do. I still worked in the little, really, really small town of Crestone, which in the town proper is like 100, 200 people. And then there's like maybe 1,000 to 2,000 outside of it. And yeah, I worked at the grocery store, worked at a herbal tea company, and all these different random jobs. And I would do that, and I would just basically do my practice, and I'd be with my teachers, and I lived like that for sometimes there'd be other people on the retreat coming through. Like for instance, I said I met Scott, right? Like one of my
Yeah.
best friends who I live with now. So he came through at some point. We lived together for a couple of years. And other times I was just by myself. So uh,
Wow.
up at 8,500 feet in the Sangre de Cristos Mountains, and some of my best friends live there still to this day. I'm actually going to be co-facilitating a men's retreat at the end or at the beginning of September with Adam. I don't know if you know Adam, the shoulder coach.
Oh yeah.
He's
I've seen his
yes,
stuff.
Yeah, so he's my buddy, and we become friends through a mutual connection of a really good friend of mine who lives in Crestone, and we'll be hosting a men's retreat, and so I'll be going back to Crestone. I'll be going back to Crestone in July because my little brother's having a baby, so we'll be out there
Oh,
whole month of July to help with that, with the birth and postpartum, and so yeah, Crestone's near and dear to my heart for real,
wow.
forever.
What are some of the practices that you learned up there, the internal practices you were talking about that you still do today?
Yeah, I mean, well, there were so many different schools of meditation that we pulled from, but primarily Kriya Yoga.
Okay.
Yeah, primarily Kriya Yoga, like in the tradition of Lahiri Mahasai, Paramhansa Yogananda.
Oh, wow. Is that something you do every day still?
My Kriya practice is coming back right now, actually, but life is, and what I learned, and what my teacher always told me, he was like, cherish your time on retreat right now because it's not going to be like this.
Mm,
You're gonna leave. You're gonna want to have kids, and you're gonna probably have kids, and your practice is going to take a different shape, and it has.
yeah.
Like my now my practice has shifted. Like practice is just about relationship, in my opinion. It's just about
Mm,
relationship, and so it was a tantric path that I was being initiated into. So it's like it's where everything becomes a part of your path. You're learning through all your relations, all the reflections, not just inside yourself. And so finding the ability to know myself more and realize who I am beyond my personality through my relationships. And that can happen with your kids. So that's what my real practice is about now is like it's self-realization through child rearing is what I call it. It's
mm,
like they are my mirrors and my reflection, and like they're giving me I have the opportunity to know myself beyond my personality, my reactivity, to really be present with my kids. Like it is the ultimate opportunity for being present and working through whatever these distortions we have from whatever trauma and whatever we've inherited and whatever past experiences, right? So it's like you can find like was like a Jeffrey Martin, one of my favorite folk singers, like it's like you can know God through a cigarette just as well as through a sermon. It's like
mm,
you don't, it's like it's always right there. Underlying everything is this like, it's like the like reality is impregnated with this like, this divine, you can't touch it with words, right? But it's like it permeates everything. It's what connects you and me and us to the landscape and beyond. And it's beyond who we think we are as far as our names and things like this. And so is that mystery. It's that great mystery, and we can know that through anything, right? Like you could be a plumber, and if you had the whereabouts to really bring yourself deep enough into yourself, you can find that stillness and that presence that is magic. It's like when you drop into that present moment, really outside of the thinking mind and outside of whatever stories, and then you're like, there's that magic, and so it's just about, and that magic's always there. It's just hard to connect with it sometimes, and so but we can find that through our kids, right? Because they bring us so radically into the moment. And so that's a long roundabout way of saying that my practice is always evolving. And at this point in my life, I don't have a like, my sitting practice isn't the same as when I was on retreat, but I find my times to maintain the connection to my internal practice. And I find that through movement. I find that through relationship with my clients. I find that through relationship with my wife and my kids. And it's ever evolving. And I think that one day I'll go back on retreat at some point. I feel like I
yeah.
know that's going to happen at some point where I'll have real dedicated sitting practice. Once my kids are grown up again, I'll take more time to be dedicated in that way. But right now I show it for my kids.
Yeah. Man, the ever evolving finding yourself. I think you almost have to. Like I don't know, I'm almost 40 and it's like, man, I'm just now to the point where I'm listening to myself and being okay with asking for what I need from my wife and asking for what I need from myself. And it's like, man,
Yeah.
you can allow yourself to, man, what took so long, dude? Like, you're almost 40 and you're just now like being confident enough to want to know yourself. But it's important, man, because we're awesome as humans, each individual one of us.
Yeah, and don't be hard on yourself because it's just the cards you were dealt, the cards I was dealt, right? Like we're cultural orphans. I mean, at least I wasn't born into any particular intact village. I wasn't initiated in any real way until later on in life. I went and initiated myself on retreat. Sort of initiated myself on the streets, so to speak, as a kid, getting in fights and things like this, and putting myself through the ringer. But we're just uninitiated, and we don't have a culture and a people to connect with, and like a in tradition and things like this. So it's hard, Eventually, we come of age at some point to some degree, and we go, and then you want to know yourself more, and you're like, well, I'm 40. It's like, well, it's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you still listen to some hardcore music? I know you mentioned that before, just like heavy stuff. Do you still listen to some stuff like that?
Every now and then, yeah.
Yeah, same. My
Yeah.
brother and I talk about it like it just feels sometimes I just need to be screamed at, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think that like what is one person's, what's the saying? Like what's one person's poison is like another person's freaking elixir of life,
Yeah.
Like I mean, I
Yes.
like I like hardcore music, punk rock music was like my solace. Like I found solace in it, and it was like my church. And like I just remember seeing some of the kids at these shows like weeping, like they were
Mm.
weeping, and they're just having these huge cathartic releases because the energy is so freaking profound and visceral, and like it moves through you, and the bodies are moving, right? These were cool scenes. These weren't like tough guy scenes. These were like scenes where everybody was a family, and you fell on the ground, you got picked up by 14 people. Didn't mean that you
Yeah.
weren't going to get bloodied up
Yeah.
going through the mix with everybody, but everybody was kind, and it was healing. I could see that it was healing for a lot of people. Not a guaranteed like permanent fix, but like it moved a lot of energy, and I think that it kept a lot of people alive. And so I have a super special place for hardcore music, especially because a lot of it's born out of injustice.
Yeah.
It's this like it's this roar at inequality and inequity, and like it's like putting a foot down in a real way and saying like no, like this is not okay. And just like I love that. It just feels like so heroic to stand up against injustice in general. And so it's it's a symptom. I think hardcore music and punk rock music is a symptom of an inequitable and unjust world. And so people are like, can't believe that it exists. I'm like, well, how could you not believe it exists? Like, look at everything around you. Like, there's so much to yell about.
Yeah.
There's so much to be angry about. There's so much
Yes.
I'm angry about, and I think that like we can use that energy to move us in a good way. It doesn't have to be in a way that hurts or further divides, but like, I mean, there's nothing like working out to hardcore music. Like you put
Yeah.
hardcore music on and like you're just like boom, 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 let's move, and
Yeah.
like even just driving to hardcore music, it's like
Yeah.
it's great. And so yeah, I get down. I get down every now and then.
Yeah, you do. Do you get a chance to go to any shows? Like, I don't know, the nearest like big city you would go to shows at, but
Before I moved here, living in Colorado still, I went to a Hot Water Music reunion show. They're not a hardcore
yeah.
band. I think they're considered like post-hardcore. Chuck
Oh,
Ragan's the
okay.
lead singer. One of my favorite bands of all time. I have a Hot Water Music tattoo on my leg, and
Yes.
but it's a fast like Chuck Ragan, who I get to go fishing with in April, which I'm really excited about. Is his voice. You got to look up Chuck Ragan. Look up his solo
Okay.
stuff. Look up Hot Water Music. But
I'm just gonna put it in my phone before I forget.
he's like a lion. His voice special. And
That's
anyway, that was
awesome.
a really fun show. Got to dance and move super fast and hard. Really cool pit, really cool crowd. Um, that was the last. That was the last fast show I've
Yeah.
been to. Yeah.
When did you start? I get and where did you learn how to the movement practice that you're in now? Has that just evolved over time, or did you go on retreat with the teachers? Like, hey, this is kind of how movement and quote unquote working out training happens.
No, it's just been something I've been studying all sorts of different schools of practice. Again, like I think that that was instilled by my teacher originally because he was just like he loved dynamic Kundalini yoga. He loved martial arts stances. He loved doing martial arts katas and like kicking and punching and doing push-ups and like he just did all this stuff and it was always about moving energy and maintaining clarity through movement.
Mm,
It was always about energy. And so that was where I first got into it. But I've always just loved physicality and like exertion. And I think everybody does once they get in touch with it, you know,
yes.
once it catches. Um,
Yes.
yeah. And so I've always just loved it. And it's taken me down different places of exploration and many different schools. And what you see me doing now is just a synthesis of all the things that I love, all the things that I've found that have worked for me, and it's pretty diverse, I'd say. Yeah,
Did you have any formal, I guess, martial arts training? Because I mean, your heavy bag work looks great.
yeah. Well, you think that other people don't. um,
Oh, come on, guys.
yeah, come on, guys. Um, I didn't have any formal. It's like I went to a kickboxing class a couple times when I was a teenager. Um, I had some friends like one of my good friends, Big Ben, who lives in Crestone, and he's actually going to be co-facilitating this men's retreat with me in
Oh,
September.
awesome.
He's a semi-professional Muay Thai fighter, and
Oh, nice.
at one point in Crestone, we had a little kind of fight club amongst friends where we would train with each other, spar, and practice jujitsu, practice wrestling. Like we had a great Greco-Roman wrestler who lived there. We had a Golden Glove boxer from the army who lived there, and then Ben's a Muay
Wow.
Thai fighter. My little brother's a really good fighter too. I just grew up loving combat. I grew up fighting. I'm not proud of it, but I gotten a handful of fights, and just I've always loved fighting. I've always
Yeah.
loved that. I've just loved that. Like I love combat, and so since then I've just maintained like a heavy bag practice that's like low key. I don't claim to be an expert or I don't teach people how to box or anything like that, but I feel like I box well enough. I certainly box well enough to defend myself, and I think it's important to know how dangerous we are potentially, especially as men,
Yeah.
and to touch into that violence within us because it's inside us. And I think unless you go there and touch it and know it, then you're not capable of controlling it the best you
Mm,
can when you are put into a situation that warrants going or not going. And I think most of the time it means not going into the violence, but like you just need to be able to ride that line to maintain calm. And nothing teaches you to be able to ride that line and know yourself than getting punched in the face.
yes.
So
Yeah.
if you can have a friend who you can spar with and different things like this, and you can feel what it's like to be in a position where someone's trying to hurt you, where you can maintain, your nervous system and know how to act or respond, so valuable, and it just feels good. I think that like the striking mechanics as it relates to walking and running, all that stuff's really related. And I think it's a good movement practice. I think it's pretty natural to how the human body moves, and and it feels good. And I think it's an amazing way to move energy, maintain clarity. Again, here we go back to moving energy and maintaining clarity.
Yes.
I feel like that like the ability to pay attention in our world is like the most important thing. And if you are not of a sound mind, if you're holding on to emotion, you're holding on to anger, you're holding on to grief, you're just clouded. Like you need to move your energy. And if you're disciplined and you train often, then your physique will come, you know? if that's what you're chasing. But you don't have to chase aesthetics. I think it's more important to focus on your health and your clarity, and then
Yes.
let the rest happen. You know?
Yeah. Somebody asked, like, why do you train and do what you do? I just want to be so capable in this world, and capable meaning I want to be able to live the life that I think that my family and I want to live. I want to go out on our farm and have to move, 500-pound railroad ties because we don't have a tractor. I need to be able to figure it out because they can't stay where they're staying. So that's like capability to me. But you
Mm-hmm.
don't just get off the couch and expect yourself to do that, although I think people do. And when it comes to fighting, I think people expect that they're able to do something now as a 40-year-old or 50-year-old that they did when they were 20. It's like, what are y'all even him hawing about? Like, you would get out of breath throwing two jabs. Like, you don't even know. You have to practice this stuff to even know. So when you said, like, it is important to be honest with yourself. What am I capable of right now? And how do I become more capable if I want to? But if you don't test yourself at some level, then you won't know.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's
What
just
is,
about knowing ourselves. You know,
yes, it
it's
all,
about self cultivation.
for me recently, it's about just knowing myself and knowing my capabilities and being okay if I'm not capable in a certain area that I want to be.
Mm-hmm.
What is your, so you're creating a group now, is that true? For men, kind of an online community?
It's for everyone. Um,
Oh, awesome.
but within the community, there will be the opportunity for men who don't have the ability to find a local men's group, because I think it's better to be in person. But
Yeah,
like men's work and a men's group is a huge part of my life, and how I've seen men be transformed by being able to be in the presence of just men. It's just it's really important. And there's a special way that we get to let down when we're just with other men, a special way we get to be vulnerable and share and learn through the eyes and experiences of other men that is so valuable for how we go back into our families and communities and can show up in a good way. It's a way of having accountability. And
yeah,
so what I want to do, because half the people I coach since I came online, they just want to talk to me.
yeah,
We're not, I provide them with programming for training, but mostly we're talking about life. I'm mirroring for them. They're even mirroring for me, and we're having our own little men's circle. We're having a men's line, I guess. And so what I want to create is inside this community, there's going to be the opportunity for like groups of 10 men who want to train together, obviously not in person, but there will be the opportunity for in-person retreats that I'm going to create for people to come out, get into nature with me, be on a little reset retreat where we can get into the natural rhythms with the sun, eat animal-based foods on the fire, share, sit in council together, learn through each other, and just reconnect with men and with nature. That'll happen too. And but in these groups, I want to have like virtual men's groups where
yes,
if you can't find men to connect with in your local community, then you're going to have a community here in my community where we will show up for each other. Everybody will get to we'll sit in council essentially. And I don't know if you've ever sat in a circle with men and done men's work or anything like that, but it's a listening circle where men get the full moment
yeah,
to be witnessed and to share vulnerably, and other men get to listen and learn and share and reflect. And that'll be coupled with like live coaching where I'll be able to actually, I'll program for people inside the community. There will be all the instructional videos on how do I train. I've already filmed it all. It's like 3 hours of content, and it's just being edited right now. And shout out to Gordon, my new buddy, who's my savior video guy that
nice.
came into my life. Yeah, and so we'll have all the videos. There will be community where people can get into different challenges and train and interact with other people and share their progress, share their trials. I'll be in there doing live Q&As. We'll have the men's groups where I'll work with like groups of men of 10 or maybe 12, where we'll all be on training programs together. We'll show up once a week for a training call. We'll show up once a week for a men's circle. And
Oh, awesome.
yeah, so I'm hoping to do something like that. We'll see how it goes. I don't even know if that exists today, virtual men's circles, hybrid training circles, but
Yeah, dude.
to me, it's all a part of being human. And I don't want to leave any of it out because I don't think that training isolated, it's not going to take you anywhere. You're just a hamster in a wheel. You're just like a wolf mimicking the hunt. Like we still need to bring it back to community, back to people, back to purpose. And so if I can help some men turn pain into purpose through being in virtual groups, then fuck it, I'm gonna do it. Like I don't
Yeah,
care if we can't be together, and this is the world that we've inherited. Then let's at least show up, like you and me right here, right? Like this is
yeah,
this is strange, but it's becoming less strange to me talking to people like this. Like I do feel like I'm sitting with you. Like
yeah.
I can sense your consciousness. I know you're there, and we're having a transmission of energy and of information with each other, and it's changing both of us, right? Like we're both learning
Yes,
through this, and we're going to be able to hopefully take this out into the world and help people more, and people will get to see this. And how cool is that? Like we're getting to put authenticity and value out into the world, and like if we never become famous or whatever it is, like we know that we're helping a little bit, right? And so
yes. And it's
what else can we
helping,
ask for?
like you said, it's helping me selfishly. It's like, oh, I get to have these cool conversations just because there's a microphone in front of me. Doesn't change what you just said. Like, I get to connect with you, and that's
It's
awesome to me.
crazy.
And one
Yeah.
person hears one word and it changes them. You said, like, that whole idea that you're doing right now, it is radical in today, which is crazy to think because 100, even 100 years ago, that wasn't radical. That was just called living a life, and nobody thought of it as anything different than I need to go get eggs because we're out, so I'm just going to go down the road. And oh, I'm going to talk to Tim that's down the road that gives me the eggs. And oh, we're training together because we need to go hunt the deer to feed the thing and do. People didn't think about it before, but now we have to be conscious of doing those things because the society that has grown into what it is today forces us to have to think about that radically.
We have to be intentional. Yeah, because
Yes.
it's like we have to be intentional with our training, with our community, with our relationships, because we've been so removed from it being a part of our lifestyle that we have to, even if it's contrived, we have to do it because we don't get to decide whether we need it or not.
Yeah. I guess the baseline of a human now is, I mean, I could easily just go lay on my couch for 12 hours and find some form of entertainment. I feel like shit about it, but that's like the baseline for people, I think.
Yeah.
Make a little bit of money, be able to pay for your Netflix account or whatever. Like, that's it. How many, okay, so I have a question, last questions here. How many, so you still want to work with horses, you still want to shoot horses, but just not as much? Is that your goal?
Yeah, well, I got injured trimming
Mm.
horses,
Oh, what
and
happened?
well, trimming horses, getting underneath horses is a dangerous gig, obviously, and
Yeah.
sometimes I didn't get kicked or anything, but the horses, if they're not worked with by by their owners, they can be not cooperative,
Mm.
and so they're like they'll be pulling their legs away from you and stomping their feet down and just being erratic, and it's hard to I'm in a position where I'm kind of like in a Wing Chun kind of martial arts stance with my kind of knees collapsed and I got the foot between my legs and I'm hunched over, I'm in flexion, and then they're pulling their foot between my legs and I'm going boom and I'm catching the foot behind me, and so there's just
Yeah.
a lot of torque and like a lot of weird positions, and I think that I just didn't have the proper internal pressurization, and I was in such a fight or flight situation that it registered as a pretty intense trauma. I don't think it's like my body had like seized up and
Mm.
I had so much pain in my sacrum and lumbar spine that like I couldn't even bend over to tie my shoes for like 6 to 8 months, and it was
Wow.
really hard because I couldn't go to work, and I was also like, a movement coach that couldn't fix himself, and so it
Yeah.
was pretty hard time for me. But luckily, I found a system of movement called MoveMed. My friends Nate and Benjamin. Nate created it. Benjamin's one of the head coaches, and um, I learned through them that it was like a nervous system thing, and that's why I'm so bullish on training the nervous system and training the internal pressures and posture. And all my clients go through that training now because it's a lot of people come to me and they're just afraid to move. Like they're
Yeah.
afraid to pick things up. They're afraid to move their body reflexively, and they're like stuck in a fight or flight kind of state. And so we do a lot of work to downregulate the nervous system, create the proper internal hydraulics, so to speak,
Mm.
internal tissue tempering through proper pressurization of the whole torso and suction in the mouth, and the whole stack from the head over the rib cage to the pelvis. It's all super important, and I hadn't ever really prioritized it. I hadn't prioritized it, and so anyway, that's a roundabout way of getting back to saying that after going through that and prioritizing this stuff for me, um, I'm physically capable of trimming horses again and doing it like a ninja. Honestly, now I can
Yeah.
respond reflexively to those same situations and not get injured, and I walk away just feeling strong. And so that I feel it's the only company that I've trained under that I like actually represent, that I like feel good about representing at this point. Um, it's foundational. It doesn't pigeonhole me into any particular modality. It's pretty like just baseline human foundational shit. So,
Yeah.
shout out to Nate and Ben at MoveMed.
Shout
Those are
out.
my guys, and highly encourage anyone to go train with those guys. They're great coaches. And then if you come train with me, anybody who comes into the membership platform that I'm creating will have access to all that stuff. So you'll
Oh,
get to
dude.
learn banded neck training and deep pressure therapy and all the different things that we do for midline health, from the palate to the pelvic floor, which is so important, right? I mean, it affects your lymph flow, affects your digestion. Pressure and blood flow to your pelvis is going to affect your sexuality. Like your virility, like your
Wow.
mouth. Are you a mouth breather? Like these are things that
Yeah.
we need to really address, some foundational stuff. And I don't hear many people talking about it, but I only know what I know. Maybe other people are talking about it, but MoveMed brought me to the dance. And so
Oh,
um,
that's awesome.
their stuff's great. I was just on their podcast. That one's probably coming out pretty soon.
Oh, cool. Well, I'll check them out. You
Yeah.
taught me.
Monkey Bars podcast.
Monkey
Great
bars.
podcast.
Oh,
Yeah.
dude.
Great movement podcast.
I'm all on it then. Well, dude, I think that's a great way to end it. Thank you so much. Like, for real.
Yeah,
That was
man.
just a great conversation. I hope maybe we can do it again or see each other in person one day.
That'd be great, man. I'd love that. And I'd love to talk again. I really appreciated this conversation. It felt
Yeah.
just natural.
Yeah. Same. So, well, I'll hit you up again then.
It's cool, bro.
Awesome, man. Well, be safe out there.
All
See
right.
ya.
All right. I love to you and your family. Take care.
Oh, you too. Bye.